Win a Pageant, episode 32. I'm looking for a few of my dream clients who qualify for my VIP program. Now, I can only take a few elite winners, so if you're serious about winning your next pageant, shoot me an email at Alycia@winapageant.com to schedule your interview. Hey girl, I have an especially vulnerable episode of Win a Pageant podcast for you today. This really comes from a very personal experience that I've had that I really feel like I have a lot of lessons that I can share. So just 2 weeks ago, I lost my daddy. My dad had a heart attack and he passed away in his sleep. And when I got the call from my mom, of course, I live in San Diego and my mom lives in Pennsylvania. My boyfriend and I immediately flew home to Pennsylvania to be with my mom, and my brother and my sisters also all came in from all over the country to meet up with our extended family who are in that same area in Pennsylvania. And we were really just all present there to hold one another, to grieve together, to make decisions, to honor my dad's legacy, and to truly just heal and figure out the new normal. It was a super long 10 days, I think it was, or so. There were just a flood of emotions, lack of sleep, consistent tears. All this just really wore us out. And when I got back to San Diego early this week, I became painfully aware of the permanence of this loss of my dad. This is the closest loss that I've experienced in my life, and this process has really taught me just so much. So you probably know by now that my philosophy of pageantry is that it very closely parallels real life. So in today's episode, I want to talk with you about how to lose a pageant with grace using the lessons that I've learned from the loss of my parent. I know that these two things are extremely different, so don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm delusional. I just know that by the end of this episode, when I share this information about this loss that I've experienced, you will realize that losing a parent and losing a pageant really are not the end of the world. Plus, you will have some ways to deal with both more effectively. The first lesson that I learned very clearly is that in a time of loss, whether it is a loved one or a pageant, nobody really knows what to say. This became obvious to me when during the prayer, right before the visitation that we experienced, people coming through, shaking hands and giving their condolences, right before that, our pastor said a prayer. And in that prayer, he mentioned some people are going to say things that are just absolutely lovely, and other people are going to say probably the wrong things. And so, of course, his prayer was to just allow our hearts to be open to whatever people need to say, and recognizing that no one really knows what to say. There were some people that said, "Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm so sorry for your loss," as they went down our little line. But then there were people that, kind of showed up and were just like, "How are you?" And, they didn't know what to say. And the truth is that no one knows what to say. I know when I have been to funerals before, I never know what to say. And it's super uncomfortable for everybody because no one really knows what anyone wants to hear. So it can be a very confusing time for both sides of the event, whether it's a pageant or a funeral. And what I have found is that the best thing to say if you are on the end of the givings of support is just anything, just truly anything will be lovely, and if you are on the receiving end, if you are the one who's experienced a loss, then just recognize that just anything that they say is showing their support. One of my favorite examples from this is during our time of grieving. So as soon as I got home, we had about a day and a half to plan for the visitation and for the funeral. And during this process, so many people in our community, and it's a small town, and we had so many people just sharing their love. People were coming over, dropping off just a variety of different foods. We have a big family, and so everyone was able to be there and to really graze over the food the whole time. It was amazing opportunity for support. Well, one of my dad's friends, a very, very dear friend of his, they've been friends for just ages and ages and ages. I knew him since I was very young. this guy wanted to show his support, obviously, and he came and was bringing our family food. But, he's an older man and he didn't know what to do. He came in with 2 pizzas and shrimp cocktail. And it was beautiful, like it was very unlike the baked ziti and the, sandwich rolls and stuff that people were bringing. But it was just such a relief, and it felt good just to have his support, And when he came in to our home, we invited him in. It was my sisters and brother and I, and we just said, it's just us here right now. We're just so grateful. Thank you for bringing this. We're so grateful. And he was basically just said, I don't know what to say. And he said, I'm sorry, I'm not good at this. And he literally turned around and walked away. And we were like, wow, that is so powerful. What courage it had to have taken for someone who really just doesn't know what to say to do absolutely his best. And we just felt so just comforted by that even though he knew it wasn't perfect and didn't really know what to say, he at least said something. He showed some level of support. I remember when I lost a pageant that was really, really important to me. It was a pageant I really, truly thought I would win. I was the first runner-up the year before, and I was going for the gold. I wanted to win, and I didn't even make the top 5. And I was really hurt by the people who I thought were a part of my support system. And because they did not know what to say, they kind of were like, oh, okay, cool, see you later, and really I felt kind of ditched by them, and I never took losing pageants all that difficult, but this one in particular, I thought, oh no, am I losing a friend here? And that really rocked me. So just recognize that nobody really knows what to say, and I think it will be in your best interest to not fault them for that. Just give the grace and just accept what they are able to say. The second lesson is that you really, really have to remember what you have learned through this process. So life, I believe, is a series of experiences through which you are really just intended to develop. So you're given all these different tests and these different challenges and these obstacles and these fun times to really develop who you are. And when you cling to what you've learned from the life experience, you will realize that the good far outweighs the bad. The same is true, of course, in the loss of my father. I am clinging to all the cool stuff he taught me. We had some really fun times together, and I have so many sayings. I started writing them in my notes in my phone, and just funny things he said, or sayings like he would say always, the deeper the roots, the taller the tree. And there was a whole lesson behind that, And so I'm always clinging to these things that he has given me, that he's left behind. And, the same is true in pageantry. When you go through a pageant process, when you're going through everything related to pageantry, you get to learn so much about who you are, about how you interact with your community, and just the support that you're gaining and the new life skills you're learning. And there's so much. Always cling to those things, and you will learn that the good far outweighs the bad. Your support system is truly vital. So I mentioned this briefly in understanding that not everyone knows what to say, but also recognizing that it is important to nurture a support system. Even though they may not know what to say, they will still be there. So when people were just around us, we felt so much more comforted. And it could have been an opportunity to kind of crawl away, like the last thing you want to do is be surrounded by people when you're experiencing a loss at this level. And so I really had to convince myself, like, no, just say hi to these people. You got to stand in this line and shake all these hands. And even when the moments when I wasn't crying, I finally got myself together, I would see my very, very best girlfriends come through the line, and even girlfriends from college that I haven't seen in ages, and just feeling their support by them being there and going through what was necessary, that they had to stand in a line. The receiving line for my father took 2.5 hours for people to get through. So, and they're standing in the cold. I mean, it was not a comfortable experience, but it so much demonstrated their love for me and their support. And that doesn't come easily. It truly needs to be nurtured, by showing support of other people. That's how you garner that. And in pageantry, the same is true. You want people to be there for you when you fall. Everyone will be there for you when you win. Okay, that that already. Everyone will be there for you when you're on top. And yet the support system is so vital when you are not at your best, when you experience a loss. And so nurturing that support system is just absolutely huge. My family stepped in, my best girlfriend stepped in, my boyfriend stepped in with just the utmost respect, love, support, and care. We were able to find things to laugh about together and remember, and it was just such a warming experience. Another lesson that I learned was that when I got this phone call, my world completely stopped. I canceled my client appointments, rescheduled them for other times. I really was like putting email totally to the side. I mean, it was like nothing else was more important than just getting home to be with mom and grieving my dad. And although my world came to a complete stop, everybody else's kept turning. And it was tough for me because I thought, good grief, I'm going through such a tough time right here. Can't you tell? But their lives kept going on. You know, everyone else is still busy with the day-to-day and they still have questions for me. I mean, my clients are still competing in pageants and people still have things that are going on for them. And so it became really difficult for me to not place blame on them and on me, because I really felt like, wow, everybody needs me. I got to keep up with all this stuff. And I also felt like, good grief, don't you understand what I'm going through here? Can't this wait? You know? So it's like this odd combination of really real emotions. And what I had to tell myself is that it's okay for my world to stop and it's okay for theirs to keep going. It's not their fault and it's not mine. So it was really about finding an appropriate balance that suited every situation, you know, while protecting my emotions and protecting my experience and protecting my family and stuff, while also maintaining the idea that, you know, everything else has to go on. The same will be true of your pageant. When you lose a pageant, you feel like just, didn't everybody lose? Doesn't everyone feel heartbroken? Doesn't everyone feel like this? And the truth is that no, they really don't. There is some girl who won and she's ecstatic and her whole family is cheering with these like blowhorns and stuff right in your face, you know? And so even though your world seems to have stopped, their world keeps going. And that's okay. That's not their fault. You can't fault them for that. And it's also not your fault. It's okay to take your time in mourning and in reflection and in healing and through all this process to get you onto the other side. There will be another side. The truth is that you will eventually get back on the horse. Whatever that means to you, depending on your loss and depending on what your next steps may be, there is always something to be hopeful for, you know, and you cannot continue to just like wallow in self-pity, or else you will not continue to experience life and continue to develop. And it's so important to recognize that you do need to take some time in reflection and in mourning. And I mean, it's not like losing a pageant's the worst thing in the world, but when you work really, really hard and you put in a lot of effort and a lot of time and a lot of finances and investment toward winning, then when you don't win, I can see why you might take it really difficultly. And many of my clients do. So it's not to say you can't experience that emotion of just mourning the pageant itself, but just know that you're going to get better. You know, there will be another chance. There will be another try. And God is ultimately good. It's okay to get back on the horse and to get on the other side. Another thing I learned that is so, so vital is that reflection is so powerful. I do not know who came up with this 3-day funeral process, but I can tell you for sure that it helps to heal a broken heart. My family, we spent so much time together. We had to hurry up and find all these pictures of dad and in the family and stuff. We're like trying to print stuff off Facebook and trying to going through all these old photo albums because we wanted to post them up so that people who maybe knew us but maybe didn't know him as well still wanted to show their support. They could walk by and see all these cool photos of my dad and in his life. And we also were putting together like a PowerPoint for the funeral so that people could see the images sliding across the screen. We had to like pick out music, and it was just like so many things that were helping us through this process. And just recognizing the opportunity to gather together. I mean, I loved the visitation, people coming through, telling us stories, people who I had never met before. My dad's old students. My dad was a teacher, a professor, and a principal at many different schools. And he was like so loved. It was awesome hearing people's stories, how he touched their lives, and just everything was truly, truly healing. And so one of the things that I recognize that I do for my pageant clients is that This is for my VIP clients. What we do is after they've completed their pageant, we always have a follow-up reflection call. And this call is for win or lose. I don't care. I schedule it before the pageant because reflection is so powerful. You can learn so much by talking, especially immediately after an experience, by just talking about it and explaining like your next steps and thinking through what you would have done differently and what you did so awesome, and all of that just is such a healing process, especially after a really highly emotional experience like the loss of a parent and the loss of a pageant. So pageantry is an emotional experience. If you've competed before, it is like an emotional roller coaster. So it can be really, really valuable to have some reflection. I want to also encourage you to give yourself grace. One of the first things that I thought when I heard about my dad's passing from my mom was that, like, when is the last time I talked to him? What if I would have called him, or I should have at least texted him before I went to bed? Why didn't I book a trip home to see him? I always kept thinking, like, why didn't I force him to Skype with my boyfriend Randy so that they had an opportunity to meet, even if it's virtual? All these awful, real what ifs clouded my mind instantly and for days, and still sort of sometimes do. And at the end of the day, you are going to drive yourself crazy with all the what ifs. What if I wore the other gown? What if I did a different talent? What if I hadn't gotten that spray tan? What if I just practiced once more? What if I didn't wear this? You're going to need to give yourself grace. You did the best that you could with the information that you had. You got to forgive yourself, give yourself grace, and move on. It's important to recognize that everybody handles loss differently. And while you might be experiencing one thing, you might recognize some other girl doing something different. The same is true of how others experience you. So if you aren't acting in a certain way, or you are acting in a certain way, other people may judge you based on how they might respond to a similar situation. So for us, I often thought when I was in the receiving line, some people were telling me really funny, fun stories about my dad, and it was like making me laugh and just be really happy about his life. And at times I felt like people were like, oh, why is she laughing? Isn't she sad about this? After all, her father passed away, And so I felt really judged in these moments, and I had to just come to the terms of like, listen, everyone handles this differently. So I'm going to handle it the way I want to handle it. And if I need to laugh about a fun thing, about a story that someone's sharing with me, then I'm going to go ahead and do it because it does feel good. The same will be true of you. So people will wonder, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Listen, as long as you are being integritous and as long as you are being true to who you are and you are not affecting other people in a negative way, you're not tearing the crown off the girl next to you, just recognize that everybody handles things a little bit differently. And so that will also help you to give grace to others, recognizing they may be handling it differently too. I recommend to not fall into the drama. A few people have asked me how my dad died, and of course, my dearest girlfriends, I don't mind telling them all the personal details, but when it is a former neighbor at the visitation in line with hundreds of people waiting, that's not cool. And I know that everybody handles things differently, and some people aren't going to say what's right. That is one of those what not to say list of what the pastor was referencing. There is definitely a difference between curious and nosy. And when a former neighbor asked me that, it felt a bit nosy to me. And I wanted nothing to do with that, of course. So I gave a little quick highlight and then I made them just move on. When you lose a pageant, you will have so many people that are bothering you for the scoop. Everybody wants to know, well, how is this girl? And how is that girl? And, what was it like to do this? And They're trying to get you to like drag you into some drama. Even if they don't mean to, they're just maybe like just excited about her. They want to know whatever. They're trying to be entertained or whatever. My answer in pageantry is the same. I usually just say, I guess I wasn't the right girl for the job this time. And then I leave it go at that. That is enough said. No drama necessary. I like to keep my emotions away from those dark what ifs. And that's exactly where I would go if they drug me into that drama. So stay away from the drama. Also, an important note is that emotions are not an indicator of truth. Emotion is energy in motion. So it's moving through you and eventually it will leave. And that's why you should not make decisions on little sleep and a hungry stomach. The same is true after a loss. After the loss of my dad, we were all totally thinking wacky. Like everyone in my family was making weirdo decisions and like saying things with utter confidence like we ordinarily would, but it was like really wacky. So we had to kind of hold each other accountable, to like, okay, I don't think we really need that right now. Let's do this. And oh yeah, you're right. Sorry. We were just crazy, because we had these weird emotions. One of my dad's friends who had experienced loss in the past actually advised my mom to make no major decisions for at least 2 years. And that's simply because after a loss, you have all these emotions like running through you. You don't know really what you're thinking. And so he advised 2 years. Well, in pageantry, 2 years may be a bit excessive, but I would recommend at least 2 weeks. So confused minds should not be making decisions. I remember after the first pageant that I lost, I swore off pageantry. I was like, I hate pageants. These are stupid and they don't really demonstrate what a true value of a woman is, and I'm never doing this stuff again. And I like instantly swore off pageants. I had this amazing director email me right after the pageant. She was all excited for me, like, hey, I would love for you to compete in my pageant. And I was like, absolutely not. I'm never doing a pageant again. Like, I was kooky, And then, it was probably a month or 2 later that I was like, okay, I love pageants again, and it's just these things happen to us. So my recommendation is just know that emotions are not an indicator of truth. So give yourself a couple weeks after the loss of a pageant to make any big decisions. The final thing I want to leave you with is the Romans 8 principle. Romans 8:28 promises that all things work together for good to those who love God. And even in this extremely difficult time for me and for my family, I have to know that God is going to set this exact situation up for something absolutely spectacular for me because I love him, and for everyone in my family because we all love God. And God's promises are not empty. My hope is in my future. And I know for sure that God is going to be able to weave this whole situation together for good because that's what he does. That's what he promises. And I cannot wait to see what God has in store for us. And that, ladies, is how you lose a pageant. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll see you next time.
To learn more and to get valuable resources to help you win, visit winapageant.com.
Hey there, I'm Alycia Darby, and I just want to say thank you so much for watching that last video. If you totally loved it and got something from it, would you just click subscribe right here to subscribe to our YouTube channel? Hey, I am here for you, and I've got so many more trainings and videos for you. In fact, this one would be a really great one to watch next. Or if that topic doesn't interest you, then try this one. It's my most recent video training. So I think both of these would be really great for you. Thank you again so much for subscribing. I am honored to be your coach. I'll see you again soon.